She was put up for auction, like merchandise, to pay off her deceased father's debts, and the crowd gazed at the humiliation with cruel pleasure. The villain, Caleb Stone, reveled in her despair, believing Evelyn's fate was in his hands. But no one expected that one man, a mysterious stranger named James, would defy this ruthless world to save her. Watch as they fought together for their freedom and discover how devastating injustice turned into triumph for them. Subscribe and like so you don't miss the climax of this gripping story. The auction in the dusty town of Red Creek, Texas, had always been a place where everything of value was bought and sold: land, cattle, and sometimes destines. On that hot afternoon, the air was saturated not only with the smell of dust and hay, but also with unspoken tension. On a wooden platform, amidst a cynically grinning crowd, stood Evelyn. Her body, exposed for all to see, was a humiliating tribute to her deceased father's debts. She was put up for sale as payment for his gambling debts to a local dealer, Caleb Stone. Her nakedness was not just an insult, but a sentence, a brand that could not be washed away. The men in the crowd, cowboys and drifters, whispered among themselves, their gazes sticky and repulsive. With each passing minute, the humiliation grew, turning her blood into an icy crust. She tried not to look at them, staring at the sun-baked earth. Caleb Stone, a man with a face scarred and shrewd, small eyes, smiled complacently, leaning on his heavy staff. He had no intention of buying her. His only goal was to publicly humiliate the family he believed had cheated him. He announced that he was putting her up for sale so that anyone could get what was left of McCoy's honor. Evelyn clenched her fists until her knuckles whitened. Inside her, a pure, unadulterated rage boiled. Not so much at her father, as at Caleb, at this cruel crowd, at this whole merciless world where human life was worthless. She felt like a doll to be played with, humiliated, and her desire to crush this injustice grew with every second. At some point, when the bids had already fallen to ridiculous sums, and the laughter in the crowd grew louder and more malicious, a man emerged from the shadows of the saloon. Tall, broad-shouldered, in worn but clean clothes, with eyes that held weariness and quiet strength. His name was James Hunter. He was a recent arrival, a Civil War veteran who had come west seeking peace, but apparently found only another hell. He stopped, arms crossed over his chest, his gaze fixed on Evelyn. There was no lust or mockery in it, only deep, almost painful compassion. This pain was so intense that she felt it even from a distance. He moved closer, his steps measured and firm.
I ask you to like and subscribe to the channel, so you will help me in motivation to make such great stories for you, and I will see that you like them. Enjoy watching, everyone.
How much? He asked in a low, calm voice, addressing Caleb, without taking his eyes off Evelyn. What do you want with her, boy? Stone sneered. Bet you don't have a penny to your name. Answer me. James's voice grew firmer, more dangerous. Stone, sensing his resolve, scoffed and named a price twice as high as all the previous bids. He wanted James to leave, to feed his own ego, but James, without batting an eye, pulled a hefty pouch of gold from his purse and tossed it at Stone's feet. I have everything I need, James said, slowly raising his gaze to Caleb. And now, she too. The crowd fell silent. A shocked stillness descended upon the auction. James approached the platform, stepped onto it, and removed his cloak. He carefully, respectfully, draped it over Evelyn's shoulders, shielding her from dozens of greedy eyes. In that moment, she felt not just the warmth of the fabric, but the warmth of a man who had extended his hand to her in the darkest hour of her life. She looked up at him. Her soul screamed, filled with pain, anger, and humiliation, but his calm, strong gaze gave her the first hope that all was not yet lost. This hope was fragile, like a spider web, but it was there. And it was her only chance to survive. As if under the weight of shared silence, James Hunter jumped off the platform, offering Evelyn his hand. His movement was unhurried, but resolute, as if he feared neither the crowd nor Caleb Stone, who still stood, stunned by the stranger's audacity. Evelyn, trembling with cold and humiliation, did not immediately accept his help. She stood motionless, her mind unable to fully grasp what had happened. A minute ago, she was an object, rejected, and now she had a savior. Her anger mingled with humiliating gratitude and burning pain. Come, James said softly but firmly, his voice cutting through the veil of her pain. She looked up at him. Despair still flickered in her eyes, but a glimmer of hope had also begun to ignite. She had no choice but to accept his outstretched hand. She carefully set her bare feet on the hot ground, and the warmth of James's cloak became her only protection from the world that had just wanted to tear her apart. As they passed Stone, he snapped out of his stupor. "You paid for her, boy, but that doesn't mean you can just walk away," he snarled. "It's not over yet here." James stopped, turning to face him. He didn't let go of Evelyn's hand. His face was unreadable, but his eyes held a steely determination. "The price was named, the deal was made," he replied, his voice cold as water in a mountain stream. "If you have any more questions for me, ask them when we're alone." James glanced at the surrounding crowd, who were waiting to see what would happen. He slowly headed towards the town exit. Evelyn walked beside him, her steps uncertain. The world around her seemed alien and hostile. She cast glances at James, trying to understand his motives. What had compelled this man to save her? He looked as if he had fought battles in his past. There was a confidence in his movements, characteristic of those who know what pain is and how to fight it. She felt something more than gratitude towards him. It was curiosity. They left the town, leaving behind clouds of dust and surprised glances. When they reached the road leading into the desert, Evelyn stopped. "Why did you do it?" she asked. Her voice trembled with weakness. James let go of her hand and turned to her. "I couldn't stand to watch," he simply replied. "It was wrong." "But now," she began, not knowing how to finish the thought. "What now?" He looked her straight in the eyes. "Now, Evelyn, you're a free woman." His words rang like thunder in a clear sky. "But she stumbled again. "I have nowhere to go. I have nothing." "I know," he said, pulling coins from his pocket. "This will be enough for a horse and food. I'm going to Wild Creek. I have a small ranch there. If you want, you can come with me." Her heart skipped a beat. His offer was unexpected. She, humiliated and alone, suddenly had a chance at a new life. But she still didn't trust him. What did he want from her? Why? She asked, trying to find a catch. "I don't know," he replied, shaking his head. "Perhaps I'm tired of watching the strong devour the weak." His words were so sincere that something in her heart thawed. She realized he wasn't lying. She was scared, but staying alone in this cruel world was even scarier. "I'll go with you," she said barely audibly. James nodded. He didn't smile. He just looked at her, like a man who had taken on a burden of responsibility without even thinking about the consequences. They walked on, towards the sunset, where the blazing sky promised, if not hope, then at least an end to this terrible day. Evelyn didn't yet know that this man had not only saved her from humiliation, but had also drawn her into a battle that would determine their fate. And, perhaps, he also didn't know that this encounter would change, not only her life, but his as well. The journey to Wild Creek took several days. James was a man of few words, but attentive. He made sure Evelyn didn't go hungry or get cold, sharing his last piece of jerky with her and giving her water from his flask. This care, which she so desperately needed, simultaneously soothed and alarmed her. She was still afraid to believe in the kindness of a stranger, for life had taught her that any help came with a price. During these days, she learned that James was a former soldier who had come west seeking a peaceful life. His past had left deep scars on him, invisible but palpable. And she, more than anyone, understood that pain. In her soul, besides gratitude, another feeling grew strength. The humiliation at the auction, the pain of her father's betrayal, the cruelty of Caleb Stone, all of it had not broken her, but tempered her. She began to feel that she was no longer a victim, but a warrior who had to fight for her life. Her gaze, recently filled with despair, became firmer, and her back straighter. She realized that her salvation was not just an act of mercy, but a chance to prove that she was not an object. When they reached James's ranch, Evelyn was stunned. It wasn't a rich home, but rather an abandoned cabin enclosed by an old fence. But for her, having spent so many days on the road, this place seemed like paradise. "This is all I have," James said, dismounting his horse. "There's a lot of work here, but I'll manage." "I can help," Evelyn offered, and was surprised herself at how firm her voice sounded. "Why would you?" he asked, looking into her eyes. "You saved me." "I owe you," she replied. James smirked. "You owe me nothing. But if you want to, you can help. There's always work." And she began to help. Evelyn worked tirelessly, trying to prove that her life was worth something. She carried water, cooked meals, mended the old fence. Each time James looked at her, he saw not the frightened girl from the auction, but a strong and determined woman. A bond of trust grew between them, unspoken but deep. But Caleb Stone could not forget his humiliation. Soon his men appeared in Wild Creek. Their leader was Stone's henchman, a cruel and unscrupulous man named Rogers. He openly threatened James, demanding Evelyn's return. "That girl is Stone's property," Rogers declared, sneering. "He just decided she should return to her owner." "There are no owners here," James replied, standing on his doorstep, clutching his rifle tightly. "Then we'll have to take her by force," Rogers said. The tension mounted. One night, Evelyn woke up to a strange noise. She looked out the window and saw that their ranch was surrounded. Several men with torches were setting hay on fire, and Rogers, with a few bandits, was breaking down the door. James rushed to the threshold, but he was immediately knocked unconscious by a blow to the head. He fell, and the bandits, grabbing Evelyn, dragged her away. At that moment, something broke inside her. She was no longer a helpless victim. She was overcome with rage, real, wild, and burning, which forced her to resist. She fought with all her might, biting, scratching. But there were too many of them, and they were stronger. All she could do was watch as the fire consumed the ranch, and James lay unconscious. Her heart was torn with pain and fury, but she knew she had to survive. She had to get revenge. Caleb, who stood at a distance, watched with a cynical smile. "Now you know your place, Evelyn," he said when she was dragged to his horse. "You were my property, and always will be." She spat in his face. "I'd rather die than be yours," she cried out. Her eyes burned with hatred, and her resolve was unwavering. Evelyn realized that the only way to escape was to fight, not to wait for help. James, regaining consciousness, saw the burning ranch. He was wounded, but not broken. He realized that Evelyn had been kidnapped, and his heart filled with pain and despair. He got to his feet and, limping, walked towards Red Creek. He was no longer just a veteran seeking peace. Now he was a man who had lost everything, but had gained a new purpose to find Evelyn and avenge their ruined lives. A new, more brutal battle was beginning. A few days passed. Evelyn, once again a captive, was not broken this time. She sat in a dirty, cramped room on Stone's ranch, but there was no fear or despair in her eyes. Only cold, seething rage. Her mind, once filled with horror, was now clear and focused on one goal: to survive and to get revenge. Caleb Stone, confident in his victory, only occasionally looked in on her to revel in her humiliation, but he saw only her contempt and unwavering resolve, which angered him even more. Meanwhile, James, despite his injury, managed to reach Red Creek. He didn't seek help from the sheriff, knowing that in this town, power belonged to Stone. Instead, he began to act stealthily, like a shadow. He reconnoitered Stone's ranch, studied its guards, and made a plan. The rage he felt was not just a desire for revenge, but a deep, burning need to restore justice. He felt guilty for not being able to protect Evelyn, and this guilt gave him strength. Their fates intertwined again one night. Infiltrating Stone's ranch, James silently eliminated the guards. He moved cautiously, each step measured and precise. He had endured many battles in his life, but this one was the most important. It was not for honor, not for land, but for the life of the woman he had saved. Evelyn, hearing a noise outside, realized something was happening. She grabbed a heavy stone that lay in the corner and prepared for a fight. She wasn't going to wait for salvation, she was going to fight for it. When the door to her room opened, she swung, but then saw a familiar face. "James," she whispered, and for the first time in a long while, a smile, full of relief, appeared on her face. "Let's go," he said, handing her his revolver. "I'm not doing all the work for you." At that moment, Caleb Stone burst into the room. Seeing them, he drew his pistol. He was furious, his face contorted with rage. "You," he snarled, pointing at James. "I knew you'd come back." James looked at him calmly. "I'm back," he replied. "And now you'll answer for everything." A shootout began. James was wounded, but his speed and experience were on his side. He wounded Stone in the arm, and Stone dropped his pistol. But at that moment, when it seemed like everything was over, Rogers, who had survived the fight with James, shot him in the back. James fell. Evelyn, seeing this, didn't wait for Stone or Rogers to reach her. Her hand, clutching the revolver, didn't tremble. She fired. The first bullet hit Rogers, and the second hit Caleb Stone. They fell, silenced forever. Evelyn ran to James, who lay on the floor. His wound was deep. She took his hand. "We did it," she whispered. "Yes," he replied. "We did it." In his eyes was endless pain, but also a new kind of hope. Evelyn helped him to his feet, and supporting him, they walked out of the house. Behind them, Stone's ranch blazed, and ahead lay the boundless desert. They had walked through fire and blood, and now they were free. They returned to Wild Creek, where they had to justify themselves to the sheriff for a long time, but in the end, they were acquitted. After all the events, James and Evelyn decided to rebuild their ranch. It was difficult, but they worked together, helping each other, as before. Finally, they found peace. This story was not just a tale of salvation. It was a story of rebirth. Evelyn, once humiliated and broken, became a strong, determined woman who learned to fight for her life. James, once a lonely veteran, found meaning in protecting others. They were two broken souls who, upon meeting, helped each other become whole. Their story became a legend in these parts, inspiring others to fight for justice and believe in themselves.